Welcome to the Influencer Media Alliance podcast, where we advance, connect, and advocate brands to the world's most authentic influencers that are making a difference all around the world. I'm your host, Snapchat Steve, and we have a very special guest today on the IMA podcast. You may not recognize his name, but I'm sure that your life has been affected by him, and you have definitely used his inventions before. We had Dr. John Goodenough on the show today because he is one of the most influential and best inventors of our time, and I am personally trying to hook him up with Elon Musk directly. This man invented the lithium-ion battery more than 30 years ago and was the original developer of random access memory, that thing that goes into your computer. At the very young age of 94, he is still working every day at the University of Texas at Austin and just made another brand new breakthrough in battery technology. This new invention is so important and is going to revolutionize the next 30 years to come that even Google CEO Eric Schmidt was tweeting about Dr. Goodenough. We'll be coming out with the video interview on YouTube soon, but in the meantime, please let me know if you have any ability to help me get him introduced to Elon Musk directly. Thanks so much and enjoy.
That's not good.
That's terrible. Okay. So if I'm scratchy voice, you'll know why.
I know why. And what I think is incredible is you're 94, correct?
Yes.
My grandmother's 94.
Yes.
And I'm very close to her. And so I think it's very fascinating the life that she's lived. You know, she's seen so much change.
Yes.
And while I'm sure everybody else wants to come in here and ask you a million technical questions and, you know, this and that and the other, I'd really like to take a couple minutes and get a better understanding of you.
Okay.
And maybe your life path and why you're so passionate about, I mean, this isn't your first rodeo.
Ask your questions, and I'll answer it best I can without too long a shaggy dog story.
Why don't you just start out and tell people who you are, why you're, you know, well known in the community.
Well, I'm John B. Goodenough, and I've been
John
here.
What?
Goodenough.
Yeah.
And I've been a professor here at the University of Texas at Austin since 1986, which makes it about a little over 30 years. And you have to forgive the fact that I'm recovering from the flu and have a bad voice.
Of course. So where were you born?
Well, I was born of American parents in Germany in 1922 in Jena, Germany. My father was a student at the University of Oxford at the time, writing his D.Phil.
Okay.
And he went back, and when I was about 3 months old, I think I was back in America, or 6 months, and he was a professor at Yale University of the history of religion.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was raised in New Haven, Connecticut until the age of 12.
Okay. And so what got you into what you're doing now?
Well,
Your passion for it. Where did it really, I guess, stem from? Or is there not a specific instance?
There's no specific thing. I just have to give you a little history of some kind. You can edit it as you will.
Sure. That works for me.
And so I had dyslexia, which was not very well diagnosed in those days, and I was frustrated that I couldn't read. And even though they wanted to put me back a grade when I was in 6th grade because my reading was bad, my father managed to arrange for me to go to a boarding school at full scholarship at Groton School in Massachusetts. And this was an Episcopalian boarding school.
Mm-hmm.
My family was very agnostic, and it was very avant-garde and devoted to the ideas of Freud and so on. But I escaped all that and went to this school. And I needed the structure of the school, and I responded to it very strongly. I was there for 6 years. I didn't understand the symbolism and the parables of Christianity. And so, but since I was 12 and my voice was still not dropped, I got to be in the choir, even though I had no great musical talent, and I loved the music very much. And so when I was about 14, I said, I really want to understand what all this symbolism and all this music and all this is about. So I decided to get baptized.
Okay.
And I still didn't understand. So the next year I decided to apply for confirmation. So, yes.
Come in.
Come in.
Hi, sorry. I just give you the...
Just drop it and give me the change, and thank you very much. Okay.
Sorry.
And I suppose the putting of the on the hands by the bishop was meaningful in some sense, but I still didn't understand.
Okay.
So here next year, or when I was about 16, I guess, I had to take a course in poetry. If you're somebody trying to pretend you know how to read, but you're still a bad reader because of the struggle you had as a child, it was a challenge. And my first assignment was to write a critique of Shakespeare's sonnet, "Let me not to the marriage of true mind admit impediments." Well, I struggled with that paper and I got it back in the next day. And written on the bottom of the paper was, "This assignment was too much for you, wasn't it?"
Really? That's funny.
So I decided that what I'd better do is to try to understand what the problem the author had when he tries to write a poem. So I decided I'd better start trying to write poetry myself.
Okay.
And so I learned about metaphor, and I learned the importance of metaphor and parable and story.
Okay.
And in the spring, I was reading a poem called "The Hound of Heaven." And I went home for Easter holiday, and I said to my father, I don't understand what people mean by God.
Wow.
And he said, well, that's fine. Let me show you this is an old problem. And I'll show you all the history of the gods that people have painted and done from the time of the Babylonians on. And he showed me all these historical things. Well, I went to bed that night, and I had a dream. And these figures came one after another. And as they came up, I said, but that's not God. That's God, not God. Then the Hound of Heaven appeared in my dream. And I said, but that's not God. Then the hound smiled. And I looked, because I loved animals, I looked deep into the smile of the hound, and there was this warm glow. And suddenly I said, I now understand. God is love. And I got very excited by that. I woke up, I discovered something. Right?
It was a profound moment for you.
And it was changed my life. And so I then became interested in the whole area of metaphor, the whole area of reading, the whole area of religious experience, and so on.
Okay.
And so I went on, and as one who doesn't read very well, I didn't take history courses and government courses and all those things. I did Latin and Greek and mathematics.
Is mathematics your passion, you think?
No, let me just finish, okay?
Oh, please. I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
I love it.
So I went on to Yale University, and I did well in my entrance exams in mathematics and Latin, and got honors in even in English and in Greek, and my Greek professor congratulated me, and he said, "That is due to your elbow grease." He said, "You've learned to work hard."
Right.
And so I was interested in philosophy when I was at Yale, and I took mathematics, and I decided to take a course in psychology, of course, because that was the thing from my parents and so on. And that course was so bad that I thought, well, that's a completely fraudulent discipline. So I went on. I did German in college. I'd done French in high school. And I did mathematics, minimum amount of mathematics.
Okay.
But it was 1941.
Right.
So I had known since 1936, I think it was, when Hitler moved into the Rhineland, that I would be going to be a soldier. And I had all these pictures of the veterans of World War II and their trench feet when they came as plumbers to work at the house and so on. And I didn't like the prospect very much, but I knew it was inevitable. So we were trying to get as much education in as you could before you were going to be in the Army. Well, when Pearl Harbor came, I went to volunteer. And my math professor called me into his office. He says, "John, don't volunteer for the Marines like all your friends. They need somebody with your mathematical background to volunteer for meteorology." And I said, "Well, that's not a bad idea. I don't want to be a hero being shot at."
Mm-hmm.
So I signed up, and that gave me another year to be able to work over the summer and so on, to just get enough so that I only needed one more course to graduate. And they gave me credit for my meteorological training in the university, in the Army, for the last course, so I was able to graduate. Of the class of 1944, but in 1943. And so I was in the Army as a meteorologist, sending planes across the Atlantic Ocean. And while I was waiting to be called, I was reading Whitehead's Science in the Modern World. And I had somehow a feeling come over me that if I ever had the opportunity to go to graduate school, I should study for a PhD in physics as being fundamental for science. Well, I was putting myself through school because my parents had separated.
Okay.
And my dad had given me $35 when I went to go to school, and he said, "That's it, son, and you'll buy your books for your first."
That's it?
And
Wow.
I said, "I'll never take another penny from home." I never did.
Wow.
Okay?
That's impressive.
So, I never had a lot of money, but my parents were well, but he had a job during the Depression, but he lived beyond his means. He was a man who had big ideas about being a prominent scholar.
Mm.
And he had to live up to the expectations of his generation.
And so you saw that, and you always avoided it.
And a lot of things happen with child observes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Children observe a lot. And they develop a certain sense of who they are and who they aren't in what they don't want. So, and when I was sent to this Episcopalian school, I had access to all the very wealthy people. I mean, the Roosevelts were there, for example. It was their school and so on.
Did you get to meet them ever?
And I was helped by these people because when I didn't have enough cash to get through the vacations, because I was earning 21 meal tickets for working, for working 21 hours as a grader and so on in school. And on the holidays, you were supposed to find a way to pay for yourself. And I was invited to their homes, and they were very good to me. And I always felt welcomed and relaxed with all of this high society.
The Rockefellers?
Well, J.P. Morgan family.
Wow.
And the coming out parties in New York, I got invited to dance with all the debutantes and all of that stuff.
What?
But I said, and you know, the boys would be shy and sit in the corner and drink too much, and I would dance with the girls.
Nice style. I like it.
and so I realized it wasn't my life.
Uh-huh.
But I was arranged, and I got through school because somebody arranged for me to be a tutor of some nice families. So I got my room and board during the summer. And I got enough money to pay for my room at school. Well, anyway, I'd gone off to the war, and my struggles with trying to come to grips with my experience as a young person and what I should do with my life and I had tried to, my father had wisely advised me, close as few doors as possible so you have your options open. And so there I was. And so I hadn't come closure. I went to the Army. It was a good change for me. I was paid for the first time a salary and food and so on. Could save a little money.
Mm-hmm.
And when the war was over, I was sitting in the Azores, and waiting for my turn to go home. Well, I got a telegram. And the telegram said, report to Washington in 48 hours. I packed up my dunnage and went to Washington. They said, I'm sorry you're a day late, but you're supposed to be in Chicago. You've been elected as one of 21 students to be able to be paid in grade while you go to university, and you have an opportunity to study either physics or mathematics in graduate school at either the University of Chicago or Northwestern University. Well, on the train ride out to Chicago, my experience of sitting in my chair in reading Whitehead 4 years earlier or 3 years earlier, whatever it was. And I said, well, I guess that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to sign up at the University of Chicago to go to physics. And so I went, and the registration officer said, I don't understand you veterans. Don't you know that anybody who'd ever done anything in physics had done it by the time he was your age? And you want to begin? And I said, well, yes, but the University of Chicago turned out to be the right place because they started their graduate school at the junior year.
Mm-hmm.
So I could begin as a graduate student and do my physics. And so Fermi was old school, and he was set the situation up there, and he said every student, the teaching was, the library is available to you. Teach yourself. We'll give you courses that are interesting for the professors, but it's up to you.
Now, I'm sorry to interrupt. When they told you that, you couldn't do that, or most people starting that late couldn't, did that drive you to want to achieve it that much more?
Well, let me put it another way. I said, I know that I haven't the talent to be a professional theoretical physicist or a professional theoretical mathematician. However, I believe this is what I'm supposed to do, that I am called to do this. So I've signed up. And I had no recourse because I had no, I was on my own. I had to succeed. So I had to work hard, but I wasn't the best graduate student. However, only 10% of us finished that course, and I managed to be one of the 10%. Okay? But Fermi had set up that before you could go on for a PhD, you had to take a 32-hour qualifying examination on the entire field of physics and pertinent topics in mathematics and chemistry. And the first time I took this horrible examination, I passed it to the MS level, but not for the PhD level, and I had to take this thing a second time. So I managed to have a young lady whom I had been studying the Bible with in school. She invited me to her parents' home. Her parents were good Methodist preacher, and the mother said, "You don't do that, I'd invite a man to spend the summer." But they trusted their daughter, and they trusted me because at that point I'd made a commitment that I realized I couldn't be a secret Christian. I had to make a declaration. It was not easy to do in an academic environment.
Okay.
When fellow students would take advantage of it to tell a professor, "If this fellow good enough, something wrong with him."
Oh.
Okay?
Okay.
But it was fine. I made my commitment. So part of my passion arises from the fact that I've been exposed to the idea of the holy, the idea that the Holy Spirit is something that is operative in some funny way that we don't understand in the world, and that I will find meaning in life by trying to serve that which is holy. All right? And so I studied in the basement of this young lady's his father's church for the next round of the examination. At the end of the third day, I thought, well, I flunked it again, and I went out and played a game of baseball. And I felt a little better having played baseball, and I said, well, I got nothing to lose. I might as well go in for the fourth day. And for some reason or other, they allowed me to go on for the PhD. So I went to my professor, it was Clarence Zener, because he was the only solid state man. I knew I didn't want to do nuclear physics. And I said, "Can I be your student?" He said, "Come back on Thursday, I'll let you know." I came back on Thursday, and he said, "Fine, you can be my student. Now you have two jobs. The first is to find the problem, and the second is to solve it. Good day." Because Fermi had said no professor was allowed to collaborate with a student on the thesis. The thesis had to be entirely the student's to show that he was capable of being an independent scientist. Okay, so that was fine, but my professor was a kind man, and he had a bag lunch for his students on Wednesdays, and the students were required to give a lecture on some topic. So it was my turn, I gave a lecture, and then he called me into his office. He says, "That was fine, John, but did you find a problem?" But then I understood what he was trying to do. So the second time I found a problem, but it was too easy. The third time, a problem was too hard. And the fourth time, a problem that was about right. So, and when I came to my last year and I was coming to finish my dissertation, he took a job as head of the, I was running out of the GI Bill.
Right.
And I'd said I got opted out of the program that I'd got me initiated because I said I didn't want to be in the Army all my life. And so he invited me to be a research engineer at Westinghouse while I finished my thesis. And so I had enough money that I could then tell the young lady, "Let's get married." So I got married.
Okay.
And then...
How old were you?
What?
How old were you when you got married?
I don't know, must have been 26 or 27.
Okay.
I mean, proper age.
Yeah.
I had managed to escape getting involved improperly until then. And so, and then he wanted me, he had an idea that he was going to do thermoelectric power, and he was going to use nickel oxide to do it and so on. And he brought it down, and he was a man full of ideas. And every week he'd come down to the staff and say, "Here's a new idea for you to think about," and so on. The wise ones knew just to ignore the second, third, and fourth one and just till they had a chance to digest what he was trying to say on the first. I took a look at this problem and I said, "Sir, I don't think you're going to get around the Wiedemann-Franz ratio." Well, he thought that I wasn't very clever, and that the boy, who was a very clever boy, but who was a back scratcher and who would vilified me because I was a Christian. He went on to work on Zener's thing, and they eventually came up with bismuth telluride, but still didn't make it because of the Wiedemann-Franz ratio.
Right.
And but I was told, "John, now that you're getting your degree, you better find a job." So I was very fortunate. I knew I didn't want to wasn't prepared to be a professor of theoretical physics. I had an offer at the University of Pennsylvania. My brother was there. I didn't want to go. So I took a job at MIT at the research laboratory, Air Force Research Laboratory, Lincoln Laboratory. And they had the problem of trying to develop a memory for the digital computer. At that time, the digital computer was hot bottles in a ballroom.
It was what?
Vacuum tubes.
Oh.
Called hot bottles in a
Hot bottles.
in a ballroom.
Okay.
But they couldn't get the speed. And Jay Forrester at MIT had invented the idea of the first ROM memory, but he didn't have the magnetic material to make it fast enough. As an electrical engineer, he thought it was a problem of eddy currents. He rolled them thinner and thinner, and he could. So he had said, "Look, they've been developing during World War II the ferri-spinels, which are ferrimagnetic, not ferromagnetic oxides, have a slightly smaller magnetization, but they're insulators, they're oxides, ceramics." My job was to come and work with a small group of us, to develop a square hysteresis loop and pH hysteresis loop in a ceramic, where the only way people had done it in the past was to roll alloys that were the right alloys to align easy magnetization directions in a certain direction, and you can't roll ceramics.
Right.
And so the magnetician thought this was an impossible, absurd task. However, that was what I was assigned to do, and so I got introduced to ferrimagnetism and to spinels and to the chemistry of transition metal oxides, and within 4 years we solved the problem. And I've worked out a number of interesting things. The magnetic interactions, orbital order, we had to use dynamic orbital order of things in order to get just the right imperfection in the material in order to get the square hysteresis loop. Excuse me. Hello.
Hi, Kim.
Yeah, you're fine. You're fine.
I don't want to come in on